Hello and welcome back to the only show repopulating faster than a Kaminoan clone factory. I'm Max.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Luke.
And this is Force for Thought.
That can annoy anybody.
That's good. Hello and welcome back to not just our listeners, but also to us, because it's been a long time since we recorded, so we're excited to be back.
Been a very long time.
We've been off for quite a while on various paternity leaves.
Yeah, you guys didn't get as good of one as I did. I remember when I had my son Levi, you said I got a great paternity leave thanks to our producer, so thank you.
Yeah.
We had the most quality or content bulked up at that point.
Yeah,
so
we did.
It was just kind of a luck of the draw, I suppose. Because we're completely out. We have no more pre-records, so now we have to go back to the studio to record. Obviously,
we're completely out.
We don't know what the hell we're doing anymore.
And we've missed you all. It is crazy that I feel like we've been releasing these episodes still weekly, but we've recorded some of those forever ago, like the one with Sway for the Rogue One review. I don't even know when we recorded that.
That will just come out.
It was a couple weeks ago. Your beard length is so drastically different between
I think
episodes.
you had hair in a couple of them.
Yeah, you had hair. Yeah, like there's so many weird things like that.
I have gained and lost 25 pounds since we recorded that episode of The Phantom Menace. Like it's.
Our viewers are very concerned. They're like, "Are these guys ill? I think they're sick."
And I'm just really pale all the time. So
that's just bad lighting.
Yeah.
No, he looks like that.
Yeah. That is the same.
But yeah, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened. So I wanted to kind of, talk about some of it. The biggest two things kind of in the news, I guess, that I want to talk about, get your opinions on are the Skeleton Crew trailer, because we've never talked about that yet, as well as the Acolyte's cancellation. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about Tales of the Empire, because that came out on May the 4th. And here we are. Doing a timely review nearly 4 months later, so we can't wait to jump into that one. Gave us a lot of time to kind of mill it over a little bit.
Yep.
But yeah,
watch the 6 episodes.
Let's start with the Skeleton Crew trailer, because obviously that dropped, and that does look very interesting. Matthew, I'm very excited for your opinions on it, because it does have a very 80s...
Say it.
What do they call it?
Amblin
style kids on bike story. And that seems like something right up your alley. So what do you think?
I was going to say, Mother May I? I am really excited for Skeleton Crew. It is the kids on bike story. Those are my favorite. I was in a interview recently, and they asked if that sounds like I was for a magazine or something. It wasn't. It was for a job.
Those were Sexiest Man Alive, actually.
Yeah, it was.
Once again, he did not make the list, but they did interview him.
Yeah. They're like, why did he submit? You can't submit to this. And so they were asked like what my favorite movement within the within like all of film, and like I don't know if this is necessarily my favorite. One of my favorites is the kids on bike storylines, because that gave.
How could you not say sci-fi fantasy?
Well, it's not really a movement. Like sci-fi fantasy is a
was
genre.
In the 70s, right?
I'm
sorry, I digress. That's a whole other conversation. We can talk about it some other time.
Like actual movements and stuff.
Was this specific to movies, or were they looking for like civil rights or something? And you're like, wow, this guy went deep.
I was like, kids on bikes movies. No, it was movies specifically.
Martin Luther King Jr.?
No,
let me tell you about E.T.
It was for movies. And it just kind of gave that
That is
story.
such a wasted opportunity to naturally bring up your Star Wars podcast that has been going strong for a year and a half. I cannot believe you.
Oh, don't worry. I wiggled in.
Sci-fi.
I've had multiple interviews, and I wiggled in Force for Thought during all of them. Today we had an open house for our house today. Not an open house. We had a showing for Lynn and I's house today, and I left Force for Thought stickers all over the place as free promotion. Well, not all over the place. They're all in my office in a neat manner. So they're like, I'm going to Google that later. No. So sorry. The Skeleton Crew trailer I'm very excited for. Off the jump, I mean, I love the score. It does feel very Amblin-esque. And also I assume people do know as well, but like obviously Amblin was not created by Steven Spielberg, maybe it was, but him and Kathleen Kennedy, both of them were a big part.
Is Amblin a person or
Amblin
a style?
is an entertainment
company,
right?
Yeah.
A company? Oh.
Yeah, and so they made a lot of these movies, like E.T., the Goonies, things like that, especially in the 80s where there was a lot of kids on bike stories.
Let me stop you there, because with the Skeleton Crew trailer coming out, I have heard that phrase, kids on bike stories, a lot more lately, and I've heard it, I mean, before Skeleton Crew trailer came out, I've probably heard it 15 times in my life. 14 and a half of them were probably from you. Yeah. And I never followed up because, you like what you like, and I'm not that into it, but whatever. But now it pertains to Star Wars, so I want to know, what is kids on bike stories besides E.T. and Goonies? Because
I mean,
there's just 2 movies, and I hear people talk about this like it's a
there's
entire genre, and I've only ever heard of those 2 movies, and then Stranger Things, harkening back to E.T. and Goonies.
That's true. I mean, those are 2, I would say, of the best examples as well. But there's things like Explorers that I feel like no one has ever really watched as well. But
what's his name? Stephen King book where they find the dead body. That's another one.
Stand By Me.
Yeah,
I would say even It potentially can pertain to one as well, especially the newer version of It where it does take place in the 80s. The other one was in the 50s, and the book source materials in the 50s as well. So I mean, there is a huge subgenre if you just like kind of go in and look for things. Again, I'd say E.T. and Goonies are the best versions of them though, and that's what Skeleton Crew I think is harkening back to. It looks really interesting. I like the idea of putting Star Wars in that kind of style. The only thing that we texted about this a little bit too, but the only thing that I have a concern about is what if it is just going to be a better movie? Because Kids on Bikes stories are great movies, and Stranger Things does it really well, but that is like the only TV show that I can think of that does it really well. There's a lot of other copycat TV shows that just don't, that it kind of falls flat on its face, because you need to have a lot of character, you need to have a lot of heart, and it's like sometimes hard to nail that tone. I hope Star Wars gets it because I think it has the opportunity to do that. I mean, just seeing the planet that we're going to be on and it looks like a suburb, all that stuff is very exciting to me. I'm really thrilled that these kids get to go off on this adventure, and then meet Jude Law, who is a Jedi. So I'm excited to see how they interact with the bigger world ultimately, and that's what these Kids on Bike stories are about, is these normal kids getting thrusted into a situation that is abnormal for them, which again I always love those kinds of stories.
That sounds like a perfect setting for Star Wars. And say what you will about all the Star Wars projects that have come out in the last 10 years, I think every single one of them, for better and worse, has not lacked heart. So if that's all you really need to make a Kids on Bike story work, I do think Star Wars is in a good position to make that happen.
I'm trying to think if that's true or not in my head.
Well, while you think of that,
I'll
say this.
Example that I would guess someone might push back on is Book of Boba Fett not having enough heart, and it does because of that one time when Din Djarin says this is the way right before they go out and fight the final fight when they think it's a suicide mission.
That's not a heart though.
So
that's a great
heart.
Because once again,
awesome.
The best part of the Book of Boba Fett is only the Mandalorian.
He had a lot of heart, and that's
no one denies that those 2 episodes and the scenes with Mandalorian are the best parts of that whole show.
That's what I'm saying. For better or worse, the Book of Boba Fett did have heart.
The most heart in that show with Boba Fett involved the Rancor. Anyway,
I don't think that's heart though. I think that's a good callback.
Oh, really?
That's a good call. Guardians of the Galaxy is a movie that has like a lot of heart, right? Because it tricks you into being, at the very end, you're like, holy shit, why am I crying at Groot dying? It pulls the rug out from underneath you because it makes you care about these characters within an hour. And I think a lot of Star Wars shows maybe are lacking that, and that's why I think they aren't hitting so well. Like, I think Grogu, okay, perfect example is a lot of heart is Grogu and Din Djarin's relationship, right? You don't realize how emotional that is until the season 2 finale, when he gives him up. Like, then you're like, oh my god, that's, that is pulling the rug out from underneath you. I don't know necessarily that's the qualification for heart, but it is, I think, an aspect to it. And so I think Mandalorian has a lot of heart. I don't think Acolyte does, and that's not shitting on the Acolyte. I just don't think it has a lot of heart. I mean, it's not. It doesn't mean it's a bad show. I just don't think it's a lot of heart, like, in the fact of, like, I don't know. It does make me feel.
Also, every scene with Soul was full of heart for me.
Heart? I feel like maybe
he cared so much about OSHA.
Yeah, but did you care about that relationship? Because
I cared about Soul caring about it.
I don't know. Anyway, we're getting too distracted.
Yeah, and we don't have to worry about being polite to the Acolyte anymore. Clearly, Star Wars doesn't like the Acolyte either. So.
That's true.
Oh.
But before we get there, I do want to talk about Skeleton Crew a little bit more.
Yes, please.
You said Jude Law is a Jedi. I disagree. I think that's going to be tricky editing. I don't think he's going to be force sensitive or anything like that. And I'm very not excited for this show. I'm very interested. I'm obviously going to watch it, and I really hope it's going to be amazing, obviously. But this is just nothing that speaks to me. Like, I forget who I was talking to, if it was one of the 2 of you, but I said that this just feels more like a fun, like, mental experiment for what's his name, the guy who's making this.
I don't know who's making it, actually.
The guy that made the Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, it's a famous guy.
Mark Webb? Nah, he made a different Spider-Man movie.
I forget.
He did. Who made 500 Days of Summer.
But it feels like a mental, like, just kind of...
Who's making it? It's not Sam Raimi.
No,
right?
the new Spider-Man movies.
The other Spider-Man movies.
Not Mark Webb. Wait, which one? The
Tom Holland ones.
Oh, shit. What is his name? I'm gonna say
We're
it
all
and
using
then
our
just,
phones to
Yeah, as our
record, so we
listeners
can't look it
know.
up.
just edit his name right here.
Perfect. But it seems like it's just like a fun experiment for this person to be like, oh, what if we did this genre but Star Wars? And I don't care about this genre. Like, I understand like the significance of like the 80s movies, like Kids on Bikes and everything, but I don't think anyone, myself included, heard that pitch for that show and was like, yes, that's what I'm looking out of Star Wars. I'm curious, but I don't think it's going to be like anything that I'm like going to claim is like saving Star Wars. Not that Star Wars needs to be saved, but
yeah,
I think it's also suffering a lot from when it's going to be coming out following the Acolyte. I think if this was following something like Andor, everyone would be much more optimistic and like, okay, now let's hear out what this show has to say. But now, because Acolyte put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, I think a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, I'm okay with not tuning into this.
I 1000% agree. I think if you're riding high on Star Wars, if there's like hit after hit after hit, this feels like the perfect opportunity to do something odd. This could be the Guardians of the Galaxy out of the MCU. We are just having like Civil War. You're having kind of these darker moments. You're having these hits, left out, right and left, and then you do Guardians of the Galaxy, which is kind of completely, out in left field. And this could have been that, but it does feel like an odd timing where I don't think we're necessarily at a low point in Star Wars, but the Acolyte didn't do well. It got canceled. Obviously, we're going to talk about it. But I think, and then Mandalorian season 3, people are iffy on. I know Luke's just like,
I liked all of it.
I
but
know
I'm in the minority.
But like we
in some
are
of those regards.
and like in that, but like I feel like Mando season 3, the how Andor season 2 got pushed, then the Acolyte. It just feels like it's a little bit of an L, and I think that this could. You said it's hard to be like, this is what's going to save Star Wars to other people, not to us, but to other people. And I don't think this is it. I am excited for this. But I don't think it's going to be like the answer to how Star Wars TV shows should be made. And it is a little bit of an odd move when I think it needs, Star Wars in general just kind of needs a little jolt of, it needs a guiding force, I think. With Mandalorian switching over to the movies too, it feels like the guiding force is kind of gone, as well.
Yeah, and I didn't really think about the aspect too that Kathleen Kennedy was also involved in Amblin, so I feel like it makes sense that she's doing this, but I don't know. Reading the room, I feel like Star Wars fans aren't looking at this like, oh yes, that's absolutely what I wanted. I think the reaction has been positive. Yeah. I think everyone saw the trailer and was like, oh wow, okay, that's cool. Like, I'll hear it out. And that's kind of where I am, but I don't know. I'm just like, meh, whatever. But again, famous last words, because I said this exact same thing about the Acolyte, but it seems like it's pretty removed from everything else going on in Star Wars. So
we'll see.
There shouldn't be any other like. It's not going to ruin anything else or impact anything else. So theoretically,
it takes place in the same era as Mando. You don't think we'll see any crossovers or anything?
I mean, maybe we will.
Oh man, if we see Zeb,
get over Zeb, Matt.
You're on his side too now.
We already saw Zeb in the trailer for the
I don't
Mando
see you
movie.
for 3 weeks and all this shit changes.
Allow me to activate my trap card that I laid. I sent you guys both a picture of me opening all my toys at my house, and I sent you all my my Star Wars Rebels collection, and you both said cool. And not, Zeb is missing. So clearly you don't care that much about Zeb.
I didn't even realize.
I know. Neither did Matt.
I didn't even enlarge the picture. That's a lie, I did.
But that does bring us then to the Acolyte cancellation.
Well, I'm sorry, I want to talk about Skeleton Crew because you guys are so unexcited and unenthusiastic.
What?
And
I'm really excited, but I am erring on the caution. I do have some caution, which I have one more thing to say about Skeleton Crew too.
I did not get the vibe at all that Acolyte's lukewarm at best reception is going to impact Skeleton Crew because, I mean, I feel like you're equating it to like a Last Jedi into Solo situation. The Last Jedi was exactly Star Wars. Like, that was all Star Wars was at that time. The Acolyte was, like you said, it was very well removed from everything else in Star Wars. It was only one season of a show and it's not like it's the only show we got this year or even close to that. And Skeleton Crew is also going to be, like you said, very well removed in a different way. So even if the Acolyte was poorly received, I don't think it'll impact Skeleton Crew that much, at least not nearly as much as Last Jedi and Solo. I'm excited for it just because it's a Star Wars show. I am starting to realize that my excitement / expectations mean nothing because I'm going to watch all these shows either way. And like, I was probably most excited out of all these shows for Kenobi. That's probably the most excited I've been for a Star Wars project ever. And it wasn't my favorite. And I was by far the least excited for Andor, and it was by far my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So because I know I'm gonna watch it,
Yeah.
I honestly I don't even care about my level of excitement right now.
That's a good point.
I disagree about the impact that the Acolyte's going to have on this.
Yeah.
Because they canceled the Acolyte.
Yeah.
Like, that is the proof for me. The fact that they went out of their way to come out to say, hey, we're done with this. We're not coming back for a second season. We're leaving it behind. Tells me that I think they're trying to do some damage control to make sure that they still get some attention for this next one too. Because we talk about it all the time on the podcast. How often do they just announce something and then they just say like, oh, that's kind of shelved. We're not really coming back to that right now. They didn't announce a season 2 for Acolyte. They could have just said like, oh yeah, we're working on it. You know, it takes time. We don't know. We don't have like a time frame for that yet. We have a bunch of other projects coming out. I mean, they haven't said anything about a Book of Boba Fett season 2, Kenobi season 2. Ahsoka they did. I don't know. But whatever. I mean, they could have just swept this under the rug and been like, okay, we're just not going to talk about that for a while until people forget about it.
Well,
but they went out of their way.
A season 2 like the Acolyte did.
The Acolyte doesn't require a season 2. They finished the story.
They finished a story, but it sets up a season 2 a lot more than Kenobi or the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Maybe better than those two, but those two also did have some obvious hints at a continuing story beyond season 1.
Sure. I think Acolyte.
Kenobi's brother, Luke.
Screw it. We're hitting Zeb and Kenobi's brother. It's good to be back, folks.
But yeah, I think it's.
I agree. I think it's one of those things where you start seeing things like the Marvel memes where you just start stacking. You're seeing, I forget his name, Corey, the guy from House of Cards who's in one season, Corey, whatever. He's Corey Stoll. Thank you. Who's in him in Quantumania. Now, and then you see things like Doctor Strange. I'm talking out of my element here because I haven't seen any of these movies, but like you're starting to stack things in the negatives. I think is what Mac was trying to say too, where people are going to come in with a bad attitude.
What was before the Acolyte?
Mando's season 3 wasn't really well received. At least even people.
That wasn't the last thing. Ahsoka was at least before that.
Yes,
most people liked Ahsoka.
That's the thing is that I think Ahsoka has a stain on it a little bit. Where people are like, I haven't seen Clone Wars or Rebels, so why do I care? So it almost negated a part of the Star Wars community, which was stupid on their part not to watch or understand, but it wasn't. It might not have gotten
as large of a viewership as they wanted, but it got the right fans in there because the people who watched Ahsoka were the only ones who were going to like it.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting trajectory, and I think with last thing on Skeleton Crew and the transition into the Acolyte is Skeleton Crew. The biggest thing, like I said earlier, is the characters not developing well enough with a show versus a movie. Because in a movie, you just kind of set them up front, and then you continue on in the story, and they advance, or you just have a fun adventure. I'm a little worried that it's going to be week to week. It's going to drag the adventure, just kind of the Acolyte. We're just like, but like, what's the story? Like, you're seeing a little bit more to the story versus just seeing the full thing in 2 hours and being very satisfied. I don't know if you're going to end on a cliffhanger, if we need a cliffhanger for a Kids on Bike type story like that. Like, it really depends on how they go about it. So I'm really interested. I am a little worried, just structure-wise, seeing what Star Wars has done. Again, very different, but with the Acolyte, with Mandalorian. I would like them to be able to structure it, not necessarily like Andor, but I just mean more traditionally, I guess, in viewership and how a TV show usually works and should work, maybe. And then with the Acolyte...
If they're ever going to switch to that, though, it won't be with this. This was developed right in the height of the streaming, crank everything out as fast as we can for the streaming model. And now we're kind of thinking maybe the streaming model isn't the best thing for TV.
Absolutely.
But this show is not made with that mindset yet.
Yeah, and that's what I'm interested in seeing what they do with it, because Andor was in the same boat, though. And, they did the opposite, where they're like, we're going to do a slow burn. And some people hated it, and I would say it's the best. Obviously, we all agree it's the best.
Did some people hate Andor? I've heard nothing
I feel
but
like
praise
so
for that.
many people don't like Andor because it's so slow. People say it's so slow, but it's just a normal show. It's like, that is what a high-quality show is like. When you're watching Breaking Bad, when you're watching Mad Men, things like that. Like, to me, Andor lives up to those standards of being that good. It's not just a good Star Wars show. It's an amazing show. And I don't know why I'm monologuing now. We all agree. It's great. But for the Acolyte, the one thing I'll say to start off with it is, the thing that does upset me with the Acolyte isn't the Acolyte itself, but it's the fact that Star Wars does not have the plan in order to just have, like, they don't have a larger vision of, like, this is the story we want to tell, and here's how we're going to tell it. They're just kind of throwing things at the wall, it seems like. They're like, okay, Mandalorian's a show. Well, now maybe it's a movie. And then also we have the Acolyte, and it doesn't matter if it gets canceled or not. It's like, well, that doesn't seem significant at all if it can get canceled like that. So do they have any sort of plan for Plagueis? Do they give a shit? And now that makes me worried for Skeleton Crew by proxy, in the fact that it's like, is this going to be another throwaway possibly? They don't know what they're doing. Like, are they just kind of burning time to see what works with the fans? But like now, again, when you're stacking things up in 30 years, another 40 years, it's going to be odd, I think, when you have, before we had 3 movies, and then we had 6 movies, and now we have 9 movies, and then 11, and now we just have like random TV shows that never went anywhere, and that just seems like a weird thing for Star Wars to have. That's okay for some reason, in my mind, for the MCU to have or something, because it's newer in the grand scheme of things, but for Star Wars to have a show that is definitively canceled feels odd to me. And then we have all these loose ends, kind of. It just doesn't sit right with me fully. Which I know I can't be the only one, but like, I just want a better plan in place for these characters and these shows to go somewhere for the fandom too.
Yeah, that's fair. Are you ready to start talking about the Acolyte now?
No, I was gonna say John Watts.
John Watts.
Is
yes,
that his
that's
name?
him.
Yeah,
Yes.
I want to say Todd Phillips, and it wasn't Todd Phillips because that's the
No,
Joker.
it's
Yes,
Joker.
it is.
It's
Yeah.
John Watts.
Okay.
I was cycling through my mind too.
I couldn't hear a
Thank
single
you.
thing you were saying because I was just saying his name over and over.
I can repeat it. I can repeat it. Give me 1 second.
Just loop it over now.
I think, let me throw this out there, a little conspiracy for you. Is it possible that canceling the Acolyte is the best thing that they could have done for the show, because it could always be uncanceled, and if it did, it would be in like years from now. Maybe they get like a new team attached to it and they can put a lot of thought behind it, and they can really come back for a much different season 2 that could be way better and beyond anything that they had planned already.
Because I don't think it is the team behind it. Like you said, I know you said like Amanda Steinberg is like.
What else is it? If you get different people behind it, it's going to be different.
I think
it definitely wasn't the characters, because we loved Chimere and Soul and Jecki and Yord.
Yes, you definitely love those characters. I mean, say that.
Amanda's performance wasn't great, but the script did not give her
much to do. I just don't know. It's the things that they brought it back. Like, would you be excited? I don't know if I would be.
Yes,
super excited.
If it was like a ways away, if like 5 years from now they said, "Hey, a little surprise for you, we're also bringing back Acolyte season 2," yeah, I'd be excited at that point. But if they announced it right now and said this is coming out next year, I think a lot of people would be like, all right, didn't really love season 1, but.
I also feel bad for Leslie Headland, because I just feel like Star Wars fans can be the best or the worst. And
when can Star Wars fans be the best? I think they are exclusively the worst.
Right there, Luke. Right there. You're sitting right across from me.
Thanks.
That's actually you sitting across from me. But I think it's just like, what is she going to do next? Career wise, I almost feel bad. It's like,
oh, this didn't ruin her career. Let's relax. It was not the perfect show.
If Rian Johnson didn't come out with Glass Onion, oh my God, no, it's the second one. If he didn't come out with Knives Out, if he came out with a kind of like a lukewarm movie next, I think he might have been in like director jail. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think people would have given him the shot, but since he did Knives Out, that really saved him and kind of reinvented himself. There's so many directors that I feel like.
And didn't he do that on his own? I mean, couldn't Leslie kind of fund her own movie?
Yeah,
I mean, she has enough people behind her now that she should be able to do something like that.
Hopefully, but she's just in a weird space where she's gonna be very careful what she does next, and she has to make it a hit now, because there is like a lot of stories of people being in director jail if they have one misstep, and then you have to make sure the next thing you do is amazing, because if not, then you have like 2 kind of stains on your name.
Not to apply too much tough love here, but that's exactly how the industry should be. I mean,
yeah, it's called the free market.
You should only be turning out quality content if you're going to do that job.
I agree. It's just interesting. I just man, it's just wild.
Well, Leslie, I love you, but yeah, do something really good. I don't know what to say.
I loved The Acolyte, as you guys know, and I felt so many things when I saw it was canceled. On the one hand, I loved The Acolyte, and I would love to see the story go on in season 2. On the other hand, I hated and thought it was so unfair all of the intense hate that the show got. There are genuine criticisms that you guys have brought up that I don't necessarily agree with, but I don't outright refute. And there's a ton that I outright refute, and they were extremely loud and heinous, and I feel like because the show got canceled that they quote unquote won, and now they are vindicated in their actions, and they will probably do it again with Skeleton Crew and who knows what else.
And Lucasfilm knows that. They don't want to
Yeah.
kowtow to them, which is why I'm like, why did you guys actually cancel this, and why now?
That's what I
Yes.
don't get too, because
To
that's
me, it's
also
all with an eye to Skeleton Crew.
it's giving them power, and then also beyond that, it's just like, how do those people feel? They're probably, honestly, the people who are like really hating Acolyte probably are disappointed because all they like to do is bitch about everything, and now the thing that they wanted has happened, and
I
now
don't
what?
think they feel like they won. I
Well,
think
no-
they don't care. They don't
Yeah,
like
I know.
Star
Yeah,
Wars.
they
They're
don't
like, all
care.
right.
Now they're going to be vindicated that Kathleen Kennedy is getting fired at the end of the week, like I've heard for the last 7,000 weeks.
Since 2014.
But on the other hand, the thing that brings me peace is that, like Max was saying, it can be uncanceled. Star Wars announces stuff all the time, and I never care because their word means shit. Similarly, I don't care when
That's
they
the good
cancel
news.
things.
Yeah, which is we're gonna get into that with Tales of the Empire too, because a lot of this is like gonna harken back to what you're talking about now too.
They could very well just uncancel it, and I mean, it wouldn't be that hard because the only cast still living would be Vernestra, May Osha, same actor, and Chimere. Those are the only people you got to bring back.
Yeah.
They could wait 5, 10, 30 years and just continue the story. Vernestra's already long-lived, and Chimere and May and Osha are young. We could follow up with them again in 30 years, and they've been training. There's no time limit on this, so to speak, like there is with like Boba Fett, where Tamora Morrison is aging out of that role, and if you wanted a season 2, it's kind of now or never. The other thing is that they could continue it in books. The High Republic is wrapping up in 2025, and some of the authors are already tackling the Acolyte era. They're making a Vernestra book and a Jecki and Yord book.
Mhm.
There is nothing stopping them from continuing that story past what we've seen in the Acolyte. It could continue in animation. Tales of the Acolyte is a viable option. They like doing that format. They could just continue it there. And there's so many options. And yes, Star Wars has technically said that it's canceled, but I can look at them in the eye and say, I don't believe you. And I am comfortable with that.
I
Tales of the
would
Acolyte's
push
great,
back
yeah.
on it normally if this wasn't for the High Republic, because since the High Republic is its own time frame, they are able to tell these really big, grandiose, galaxy-shaking stories in these books and comics. Because all throughout the rest of the timeline, they don't do that. They're not going to have this huge story set during the Empire or the Resistance or anything like that, because those stories are being reserved for TV shows or movies. And that's kind of the weird distinction for me, is if you're going to watch a TV show or a movie, you expect it to be some big event. Something big has to happen. And I think that's what a lot of the TV shows have been kind of missing lately, is like there just doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of stakes involved.
Yeah.
I disagree wholeheartedly. The movies have always been another Death Star, another galactic ending event. And I really liked that the shows were taking a step back and showing smaller, more personal stories. And that's among the things that I loved about the Acolyte, that it was such a personal story.
But to keep hammering on Andor, you can have your cake and eat it too, because Andor does a really good job of showing this galactic scale of the rebellion and the birth of how that works, while telling a very nuanced individual story of this single character.
Yeah, you can do that, but there's only so many things, so many of the galactic stories that you can tell from a slightly different perspective before people start getting upset about it.
Correct. It needs to be big and it needs to be new, which means that you can't do 3 every year.
Yeah.
You need to pump the brakes a little
That's
bit and be
how-
selective with what you're the stories you're
Mando-
gonna be showing and telling.
That's how Mando felt too, though, in the beginning, where it's just like they're going after Grogu for this bigger purpose as well. And I feel like they lost sight of that a little bit, and then they kind of redirected to like this one episode where Moff Gideon dies at the end. You know, and it felt odd because it did feel like they got away from that for a minute, because it felt like this huge thing, and then
I think Mando started as a small thing. It was just Mando trying to get back Grogu. And then
Well,
once
it
season
started-
2 hit, it started expanding really rapidly. And it was like, now Ahsoka's in it, and Bo-Katan, and Luke Skywalker, and it's Thrawn's coming back, and it's the state of the galaxy, and everything was massive again in season 3 as well. And I
But it's still
liked
focused-
the small nature of season 1.
It's still focused
I
on
think-
Mando and his relationship with Grogu, though. I agree with Matt. I think season 3 was lacking that aspect. I think it kept the scale of everything that's at stake with the rise of this kind of underground empire, but starting to lose some of that interpersonal relationship between Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yeah. Except for the movie, to see what happens there, though.
Anything else that we want to talk about, either Skeleton Crew or Acolyte, before we talk about Tales of the Empire?
Nope.
No,
No, I don't think
I'm
so.
just happy to be in an era where we can talk Star Wars, honestly, even though things might not be our favorite. Actually, one last thing. Do you think I know we like to rank the shows a lot, or I do, and I force you guys to. What is Acolyte your least favorite now, or is it still hold the Book of Boba Fett for you?
It's still a Book of Boba Fett for me.
Same.
That's why and whenever people are like, this is the worst thing ever, I'm always like, really? Like,
Yeah.
can we honestly talk
Yeah.
about the Book of Boba Fett? I know Luke doesn't like hammering on it because it feels like we just constantly shit on it. And I'm really not. When I bring up the Book of Boba Fett, honestly, I'm kind of bringing that up as an optimistic way of looking at things. Like, really, it can't get much worse. But I understand that sounds very negative. But the Book of Boba Fett was so bad. It had no plot. It had no emotion, no heart, no story. Like, the visuals were bad, like nothing fit together. It wasn't cohesive. It was not good. Acolyte, it had a story. Like, it was there.
Yeah.
I don't think it was told particularly well, but like it was there. The visuals were amazing. The fight choreography was some of the best that we've ever seen. Like, the show was definitely, it had a lot of pros.
It looked nice to look at.
Yeah.
And the Pip storyline which was like so small, but like that was a lot of heart. I weirdly felt like with Osha and Pip. And then I could see a Wookiee, fight with a lightsaber all day, and so that was amazing to see. What's your least favorite Star Wars show still?
Book of Boba Fett.
Okay, so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, but the Acolyte is not close. I think the Acolyte's my second favorite. I think I like it more than Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and Mando.
Okay, but Andor's still number one.
Yeah, not more than Andor.
All right.
Are we subdividing Mando into seasons?
No.
I guess it would be my second least favorite.
Acolyte,
But it's
me
kind
too,
of it's a distance from Book of Boba Fett, in my opinion.
It's pretty close for me, I think.
You think?
That's the thing. When I have, as someone who loves to rewatch things, when I have just the gut instinct of wanting to watch scenes and versus the show, I know that it's not necessarily for me totally. Again, it has its merits for sure, and I'm not like a hater on it, but I think it would be it's my second least favorite.
Kenobi is really the only show that I do that. Go back and watch specific episodes or
those
scenes
highs
out
are
of order.
pretty high.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll do that with an Acolyte. It's the best fight choreography in all of Star Wars.
It is great.
I probably will.
But that's what I mean too. Is that those are the moments I look at and I'm like, ooh, let me see that.
And I do still want a Chimera helmet. But anyway,
the brown one, an orange one though, or like I feel like it's still I don't like that. It just the Black Series one.
Yeah, the copper look.
It also bothers me how they made the eyes a little bit bigger.
Yeah,
like how they're just
do it. Just give me the actual helmet because the Black. I mean, that's got to be a Cybercraft helmet. You have to get. I feel like they're going to do a much better job.
I hope so. I'm waiting to see what theirs looks like. I'll probably do theirs instead of the Black Series.
The prop looked black. It doesn't make any sense. Like when they were like, "Here's the."
It definitely looked black.
You see it in daylight, and it looked like a little bit lighter, but it looks very orange. The Black Series version.
I mean, like in the behind the scene photos, props or whatever, when they had like. I don't know where it was at. They had like who the fuck was D23 when they're like, here's the costumes and everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and the helmet was black. I was like, what the shit is this? Like, what is the Black Series one? Anyway, I'm not gonna buy it. Doesn't matter.
All right, but we do want to talk about Tales of the Empire as well, because obviously this was the follow-up to the Tales of the Jedi. I guess this is an anthology series, and I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to talk about it. I'm not going to start with Matt because it sounded like you had some negatives, and I absolutely love this show. I think it's fantastic. I think Tales of the Jedi is one of the best Star Wars storytelling that we've received so far. I think it's one of the best shows. Obviously, because of its format, it's hard to compare it to something like Andor, but I love Tales of the Jedi. Tales of the Empire does not quite come to the quality of Tales of the Jedi for me, but it is still very, very good. And well, that's my overall review. I'll stop there for a second. Luke, what do you think?
I love that it exists. I don't.
Okay, Matt, what about you?
Okay. All right, continue.
I don't love the show just because, I mean, I definitely don't like it as much as Tales of the Jedi because I've talked about this briefly when we've talked about the shows overall. I don't like the Clone Wars as much as other people because I don't love anthologies as much. You have to, if you're going to do an anthology, the audience has to deeply care about these characters from the get-go. I never really cared for Morgan Elsbeth in Ahsoka. She was probably like, I mean, I think I said this when Tales of the Empire trailer came out. She's like my 8th favorite character in Ahsoka, and these 3 episodes of Tales of the Empire did not move the needle at all. And I didn't dislike them. It was interesting to see that backstory, but because we know where her story ends it's not like I was on the edge of my seat seeing where it's going to go next. Like, it was a lot of cool references. It was awesome seeing the Grievous slaughter on Dathomir. It was awesome seeing Rook and Thrawn in the Clone Wars animation. But the third Morgan Elsbeth episode in particular, when they're on the Cordis, I think it's called, right?
You're the guy usually I ask that to, so if you don't know.
I think that's almost
the planet where you see her in Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yes. That was cool to see, though.
But that is almost the exact same thing I said trying to pull Cortosis from that episode of the Ahsoka show. And Cordis is the guy.
Cordis.
He's the black guy in House of the Dragon. Or Corliss.
Corliss.
Yeah.
I keep thinking of that, but it's similar to that. But yeah, the episode on that planet, I know that she's there already, and I know where she's going to end up, and that didn't interest me. The three Barriss episodes was definitely more interesting. It was just very what I expected, which isn't a bad thing for Tales of the Empire, because it's not like a mystery show like Acolyte. It's not a TV show like Andor. It's just May the 4th treat that Star Wars gives us. Some raw content that you can take it for what it is, you know? It's not a compelling story. It's just gaps in the timeline that if you're a big Star Wars fan like us and you want it filled in, you want to see great visuals and great animation, you can see it. And I love that it exists. If we're counting it as a TV show, it's probably my least favorite TV show, but I do not dislike it at all for what it is.
Yeah. I'm going to contradict myself quite a bit here, honestly, because I have a lot of thoughts.
Perfect.
And it's because I agree with you, Luke. To me, it's just like, this is a whatever show. It fills in the gaps, but I really have no interest in the show. I like Tales of the Empire significantly better than Tales of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah?
Because
that's an unpopular opinion.
Yeah, that's
the
a hot
internet
take.
strongly disagrees with that.
We've just seen Ahsoka so many times. We don't need more Ahsoka content. I think these kind of shows are able to fill in the gaps and highlight characters that we are otherwise not able to highlight. I don't care. Again, Dooku. I love Dooku. Those episodes were significantly better, I think, than the Ahsoka ones. But even then, I'm like, we have so much Dooku content in the Clone Wars. Like, let's other characters have their moment. On the flip side of that, I also find just because Star Wars, we're used to us being able to have content and then going back in order to make that content better, like the prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars significantly makes the prequel trilogy better if you have that understanding, I think. And I think that is a bad way to operate in the thinking. Like, I almost felt like they made Ahsoka, and they were, okay, we gotta give Morgan Elsbeth some more, light to shine. And then they just kind of backtrack to bulk up her story in order to make you like her more in Ahsoka. And I think that is kind of bullshit, too. A bullshit way of thinking. And so I like, the same thing with Tales of the Empire, is that I like both episodes that start Barriss Offee and Morgan Elsbeth's story arc, and then for me they fizzle out episode by episode. They fizzle out. The first episode's amazing in both story, and the second one is okay, and the third one is like okay. That ended on, to me, a very low note where I it's like, why did I even watch this? Like, and it's fine. And so on the one hand, it is one of those things where I am throwing away the cake and I'm also trying to go eat it, I guess, because it is one of those things where I'm like, I want more unknown characters to be able to shine, but then at the same time, I don't want them to be able to reverse and
not like that.
Exactly. Like you said, though, like Kit Fisto, just give me a Kit Fisto episode. Like Dooku and Ahsoka, we do not need more content with them unless it's Ahsoka's show, or they do something very interesting and different with Dooku. I don't need to fill in the gaps with him anymore. If you're having only 6 episodes and 3 episodes dedicated to somebody, give me something with Kit Fisto, like you said, Luke, for Tales of the Jedi. For Tales of the Empire, again, give me a character that, like Barriss Offee was the perfect character to do that with. Morgan Elsbeth, again, her first episode was amazing to look at, but like, give a character that like doesn't need a justification to like this character. That does irk me a little bit. So that my problems are with a lot of the Star Wars like structure and management is what I'm realizing this episode. Like I said, just with canceling episodes or shows rather, and not really understanding what characters to focus on. Again, I can't believe like Tales of the Empire, they're like, oh, the same year we're gonna have the Ahsoka show, and then we're gonna have her be 3 episodes out of the 6 episode animated show. It's like, no one else, nothing. Dave Filoni's just stroking
like
off all the time to her. Like, Jesus Christ.
I agree with you to an extent on most of that. It's
I know it's really you kind of have to because I kind of gave both sides, so it's like
I
50%.
disagree with you to an extent.
the
Which
format,
side though?
the format that Star Wars goes, it's not like a format problem because going back and filling in the gaps, if it's a spectacular show, like Andor is the tiniest gap that did not need filled in, and no one was excited for that show, and then it just happened to be spectacular. So you can make it work. The Clone Wars was a larger gap that needed to be filled in, and it was also spectacular.
Yeah.
The Morgan Elsbeth one, it's like we knew she was a Night Sister, we knew she works with Thrawn and the Empire, and we knew that she ends up here at this planet. Kind of sounds like Cortus, and she fights Ahsoka. Like that gap does not merit an entire 3-episode arc in my mind.
Yeah.
The Barriss Offee one does because everyone wanted to see what happened to Barriss Offee. It was just very intuitive what happened. Like, yeah, she joined the Inquisitorius.
Yep.
And then her redemption arc was quick and rather unearned because of the structure of the show, which it's not a problem with the writing. It's just the structure of the show. And we're not going to, I'm not saying that we should have had an entire TV show dedicated to Barriss Offee instead. But
give me 6 episodes though. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been more. But it's just the structure of the show, and it's not like not every show is going to be 12-hour-long episodes. That is Andor. Sometimes they're just going to give you a little sweet treat for May 4th, and
sweet treat.
I love them for that. That's some of the most heard I felt as a fan is that like they know that we love May 4th and we want to celebrate Star Wars, and they don't have an entire show to drop, so they're like, here, you can have this, and I just gently say thank you. I'll wait again for next year for another.
And I think that's
you
the
watch
best.
it, you just kind of go.
Okay. I think that's the best way to look at it. I think that we can't take everything too seriously. It is that specifically is like a kid's show that like if I in a couple years when like Levi's a little older and can like watch TV and stuff, I feel like that'll be an exciting thing every year if they keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, be like, oh, 3 episodes for this character, 3 episodes for that character. And so that's why I'm not taking it super seriously. To me, I don't hold it to the same regard as like Bad Batch or something. Again, it's more or less just like the idea of what they're focusing on. And also, in every storyline, like, we just need to have, like, Jedi need to stop popping up and like, oh, they survived Order 66. It's like, let's just cool it with who survived.
I feel like I'm fine with that.
It's just all the time.
Yeah,
they just use that, though, all the time. Like, there just needs to be
There were
something.
10,000 Jedi Knights, and George Lucas has said that Order 66 was 99% effective, and that still puts about 100 Jedi Knights that survived Order 66.
Okay, so what are we at now? Like 50-something then?
50? Oh, you couldn't name more than 10 if you tried.
That's true, but I think I did like the idea that the parents in the Barriss Offee episode were like, oh, our kid's a Jedi, like very young. That was cool. I like that. Like that, obviously Jedi are still being born. I like that aspect. I was annoyed when they were just like, and this other Jedi showed up, so Barriss Offee can start her redemption arc.
Mm-hmm.
I hate parroting opinions that are just the consensus of the internet, but I too did not love Barriss Offee as a pick for a character to follow. No one really did. So
I mean,
we don't have to spend too much time focusing on that. Like,
really?
yeah,
I
that was kind of
the best choice out of
Ahsoka,
I said that. Dooku.
It was. I said that
Morgan
backwards.
Elsbeth
I meant
and-
Morgan Elsbeth.
Oh, yes.
Not Barriss
yeah,
Offee.
okay. I was like, interesting. I was like,
oops.
so that's
Morgan
the half you
Elsbeth.
disagreed with.
No one really cared about Morgan Elsbeth, and I feel like everyone who watched that arc was just kind of like, okay, like that is what it is. Yeah, we didn't need that. I think like it's not really like a criticism of the show, but like moving forward, I think they can do a better job of selecting the characters.
Yes.
I disagree with what you were saying about the characters for Tales of the Jedi. I feel like that was the perfect 2 characters to pick because we did get to see Dooku, who I don't think we did see a whole lot of at the time, and get to see a different side of him, specifically being in, his Jedi era and then kind of like how he turned from that and everything. But then there was also like, Yaddle was involved, and we got to see the fate of Yaddle, so there was a lot more included in that story arc as well. Ahsoka was already a character from the Clone Wars that people had a connection with, but to your point with Ahsoka, there really wasn't a gap there that needed to be filled.
Yeah.
This one did, because Barriss Offee was obviously in the Clone Wars, and her storyline was never resolved. So I think that she was the perfect pick for this show to continue her story and to find out what happens with her, whereas Morgan Elsbeth's didn't. However, the show didn't really focus on the actual story or plot of either of their stories. It was very symbolic storytelling and very metaphoric storytelling. Sometimes I thought it was a little too on the nose, like with the names of the episodes. For example, Morgan Elsbeth's character arc was the path of fear, path of anger, path of hate. And it's like, oh, gee, where have I heard those 3 things before? All 3 of those lead to suffering, and suffering leads to the dark side. So that's what the entire show was trying to tell, was that path to the dark side, and then obviously the way out, which is the name of the last episode that we got to see, where Barris Offee's character kind of took over the rest of the show and showed that aspect of it, which I really like. That big storytelling, that thematic storytelling, I really like. There was a lot of really cool symbolism in there. Specifically, I like that they kind of ended on this cliffhanger, spoiler alert, where Barris Offee gets stabbed, and we don't know if she lives or dies, but she was able to take this Inquisitor and kind of turn her to the light as well, and kind of put an end to their path of suffering, that is the dark side. And the story is not really about Barris Offee, and you kind of figure that out at the end. It's like, does she live or does she die? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. That's not the story that they're trying to tell. They're trying to show this path of the dark side and how one walks that path to the dark side and then ultimately get out of it. That I really like. They could have done a different character than Morgan Elsbeth, I think, to do it better. But I also really like that they use this backdrop of the Empire to do all that with too, because that is the kind of the mechanism of the dark side, right? And realistically, you couldn't call it anything else, because with those 2 characters, it would be a very misleading to call that Tales of the Dark Side or Tales of the Sith or something like that.
I like what you're saying of that, the overarching story and stuff of like that storytelling and like kind of the way into the dark side and the way out. But at the same time, I also am like, man, they really just use Barris Offee as like a fake out to, we're gonna finish her story, and then they don't. They leave you on another cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, is
that's
this
not a cliffhanger that needs answered, though? That's a satisfying end to her story, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess
correct. It is. We don't need to go back. They conclusively told the story that they were going to tell with that character. Because when we left Barris Offee in the Clone Wars, it did feel like they kind of left that loose thread hanging, right? Like whatever became of Barris Offee, and we found out it still ends on a cliffhanger, but this is kind of a different cliffhanger where I feel like the thematic story is complete, and you don't have that need anymore of like, but what happens to Barris Offee? Like, I feel like it is more satisfying of a conclusion to her.
Just wait till like we show our kids that, though, and then we're like, but what happened? And we're like, well, I don't know,
because that's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's deeper storytelling.
Yeah. And then our kids are gonna be like, but it's an animated show, Daddy.
I know, but for some reason, Star Wars, the animation is like the best shows that they have.
Yeah. You're gonna be arguing with your kids later.
On my rewatch, one thing that did stick out, though, that I also want to talk about, I know we've talked about it before, was the non-binary Jedi, the one who survived Order 66, because it is very jarring when somebody refers to them as a they, and you don't know that they're meaning that in the singular. Because it was apparent on my rewatch, because I remember we talked about it, and I was like, oh. And then I was like, oh, it's just one person, though, right? And there was never any moment of confusion or anything. Like, everyone knew exactly who they were talking about and what was going on. But I was like, shouldn't there be like a little... That is confusing. Like, is the audience member the only one that's kind of like left out of this? We don't know what's going on. And I don't know. I started to stew on that, and then I had a lot of thoughts. And it's like, when you include that kind of stuff, it's like, look, you can have your opinions on it one way or another. But it like... regardless of your opinions, it yanks you out of the galaxy far away and like throws you right back into modern day. And you're like, oh yeah, this is a thing that's going on. And then it also, I saw this point brought up online, and I thought it was interesting. Like the weird, like the fact that you get these dark side users slaughtering an entire group of innocent people and then murdering this Jedi in cold blood, but still respecting their preferred pronoun. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little like, that's nice of you.
They're an evolved people.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I don't know.
It's I know. I was thinking the same thing, where it's like, as someone who's like very proud to have anybody do whatever they want and be comfortable in their own skin, I also do feel like in Star Wars specifically, to make things inclusive as possible, absolutely, but also to make things as of the time as we are now. I don't know if it'll age as well. I don't think that's going to go away necessarily or anything, but you said it, Star Wars is its own universe where like I've never even thought about people using pronouns within the Star Wars universe, because there are so many different types of people, types of creatures, types of everything, and I feel like that should just be a given versus like I almost feel like it is sometimes, again, maybe this sounds, again, as a straight white man, it's very hard to come at this stuff, but I feel like that's not saying
come after it.
Yeah, not me coming after it. I'm like, oh, it's so hard for me, but it's so hard for me to like be able to feel what other people feel. But I also I lost my thought, but I'm just like, I'm gonna dig myself in a hole now. No, I feel like it is like of the time, and the fact that it's gonna take you out of out of Star Wars. I don't know. That sounds like a shit thing to say now that I'm saying it out loud.
I
had a better way to say it.
There's like a time and place though, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
when they did it in Acolyte, like some people on the internet didn't like that, but it's like I feel like every reasonable person was like, okay, first off, that was kind of like a joke, and it's like this is a different species. Like we don't know anything about it. Like you can at least make the connection of like that kind of fits though. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, as a Marvel fan, I was getting really upset when they made Morph non-binary in the X-Men '97 reboot, and then like the internet was freaking out, like, oh, he's non-binary now, and it's like, but he's literally a mutant who morphs into like, it's like if there's anyone who can properly claim to be non-binary, it is this person right here.
And also, the X-Men are all about the homosexual community. That's why they feel other. That's the whole point of their creation of mutants. So that makes sense. That I've zero problem. That makes total sense. That Morph specifically would be.
Stand by for our X-Men '97 review. That was specifically requested multiple times.
My drawing of our X-Men '97.
Oh, have you not posted that yet?
I have not.
I liked that. Yeah.
I just kind of drew it, but we should do that because I would like to post it.
Have you watched it yet?
No.
You need to watch it too. It's fantastic.
I know. I need to.
It's really good. Anything else about Tales of the Empire?
Not to shit on the Morgan Elsbeth arc more, but the part where they're on Dathomir and the Night Sisters get slaughtered, and then she wakes up with the Mountain Clan, and the elders are like, "Oh, we're pacifists. We don't go to war." And the young people are like, "But what if the war comes to us?" And then they all die, and the old lady was like actually a great warrior, and she's has that line. She's like, "Just because someone doesn't want to fight doesn't mean they're unable to." The end of that episode, it's like, okay, so you should just shut up and listen to what everyone says and not think for yourself.
Yeah, that's the lesson.
Going to get those weapons was definitely not a bad move, in my opinion.
Oh, what I was gonna say about the pronoun thing is that in the Acolyte, it's like, should we use that as a joke? Is that the punchline we're gonna use? If you're gonna put it in anything, it shouldn't be a punchline. And then also in Tales of the Empire, I feel like that is the more respectful way to do it, but at the same time, it feels like pandering. That's all. Again, an X-Men makes a lot of sense.
It's just confusing. But
yes.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm
sure we'll be on the right side of history for this one.
Yeah, I'm sure. I agree with that too about the Morgan Elsbeth arc. There's a couple parts in the Morgan Elsbeth arc where I was like, okay, but again, bigger picture thematic storytelling. I really like Tales of the Empire. It's really just those two things that I didn't like, and it was just the choice of using Morgan Elsbeth and what was the other thing that I said? What was my other complaint? I forget now.
We're back to it, folks.
But anyway, other than that, I really like it. And unfortunately, when I really like something, I feel like there's just not a whole lot that I can talk about because it's just like,
really
did you see that? That was good. Like the animation, it's just so good. Like there's one specific shot of Morgan Elsbeth grabbing the dirt and then punching it, and I remember it was in the trailer too. And then the internet at the time was like, "Wow, that looks really good," and it does. They just the animation quality is so good.
Thrawn looks great.
Everything looks great.
Rook looked awesome. Way better than he does in Rebels.
This is a complaint that I have too. Is that just like, I think Max, I think you maybe said this, maybe Luke, you did too. Where it's like, we gotta stop using Darth Vader as like the trump card all the time, right? Where it's just like,
yeah, that was Luke.
Guess who it is? It's like, yeah, I know. He looks cool every time. I'm excited to see him every time. That animation was amazing from the side. I was like, is this actually a like real like live action? It's amazing, but it's like, yeah, we know who the master's gonna be. Like, it's not a fake out.
Yes, I am very familiar with Darth Vader.
Yes, exactly.
Especially when it didn't amount to anything throughout the rest of the story arcs, because they were like, "Say hello to your new master," and it was like, and then he wasn't in either of the next two episodes. You're like, all right,
we know who he is. Star Wars. Like, we get it.
Yeah, we're fans. We're here.
We're here. Yeah, exactly.
We're not delving into the Star Wars for the first time.
Don't worry, I sat
Tales
through
of the Empire.
3 episodes of Morgan Elsbeth. I'm good. I know.
All right. Does anyone have any force for thought?
Yeah,
I do. I was watching.
Didn't even take a bait.
The first 20 minutes of Return of the Jedi, and
he's finished Empire.
Yeah, all right.
All right.
It just took you how long? 6 months?
I don't know about that, but
just got bored with it. Moved on to the next one.
The scene where C-3PO is being onboarded into Jabba Hutt's servitude, and he runs into that droid, and the droid says, "You are a protocol droid, are you not? How many languages do you speak?" How good do you think that has to feel for C-3PO, who just all the time introduces himself to someone and offers up how many languages he speaks to have that asked of him? That's like if we walked up to someone and they're like, "Hey, do you have a Star Wars podcast?" And it's like, Oh my god, yes, and I really want to talk about it.
Thank you for asking. I've never thought about that before. That's funny.
That's always the first thing out of C-3PO's mouth, and someone finally asks him before he has a chance to say it.
And as a quick plug for the comics, too, they also talk about their previous protocol droid, and it was being tortured at the time or whatever, and there's a one-shot comic called Jabba's Palace that talks about that droid's story prior to being tortured and murdered, and it was all about his droid's like plot to overthrow Jabba, and it was actually really good. It's a very good one-shot comic. I highly recommend, called Jabba's Palace.
Did that droid die or get tortured or lose his job or whatever because he didn't speak enough languages? Is that the problem?
Man, that'd
He
be
only
really
had like
funny if it was.
5.8 million languages under the belt.
That would be such a... That sounds like a joke that they would do in the comics, but
Yeah.
no, it was not.
Because I was also thinking that when C-3PO shows up and he's talking to the droid, or is it Bib Fortuna by that? But he introduces R2D Toa. And it's like, do you speak this language? You're making shit up, C-3PO.
Why was R2 not Artoa?
Yeah.
R2D Toa.
Who knows?
I'm not a linguistic.
I have some questions.
C-3PO, if he was bullshitting his way through it, I mean, he did a great job. He made it all through whatever, translating for Jabba with the Bausch bounty hunter and then on the sail barge and everything.
Yeah.
He says he's only fluent in 6 million languages, though, right? I mean, there could be like 100 million more that he can, read but not speak, so to say. It's like, yeah, I can
possible.
get by in
Cantonese.
in Ewok Cantonese. You familiar? I believe Newt Gunray speaks it.
What is that? Is that in one of the movies where C-3PO is trying to translate something and he says they have the most peculiar dialect? Or that's what he says
That's the
about
ship.
the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, what I wouldn't give for him to translate to like a Boston accent for a little bit.
Boston accent. All right. Anything else that we need to talk about? I think that about covers it.
We never did formally talk about all our kids. Max, you had a baby
Yes.
just a couple weeks ago. I had 2 babies. Matt, you had a baby.
I did have a
That was
baby.
the impetus of our opening joke. So congratulations, everyone,
Yeah.
on
Yes.
all the babies.
And this is a reveal on the podcast because we're announcing now that Luke actually had twins. We never said that earlier. We just said that Luke was having a child.
Yes.
He actually
Yes.
had 2.
He had
They were born May 5th, super early. It was a stressful pregnancy and a lot of time in the NICU, but they're home and healthy.
I never realized that it was May 5th. Are you disappointed that it wasn't May 4th?
Kinda, yeah. But yeah, the summer kind of sucked. Like I said, I gained and lost like 20 pounds in the last 4 months. It was nice having the podcast to distract myself with, although the only episodes we recorded were the Acolyte, which was about the twin girls and their mysterious and stressful birth and upbringing. And it was like not quite the distraction I wanted.
I could not believe when we watched the first episode. I was like, oh, I'm so happy for Luke to be distracted. It's Star Wars. We'll be able to do the podcast. And I remember them being like twins and like, motherfucker,
Yeah.
like in my head while watching it with you. But yes, we're very happy, obviously, that they're healthy and doing good.
Yeah.
That's
Their
funny.
names are Fiona and Violet, Fiona Lee and Violet May, which was also another Acolyte tie-in, which was shocking at the time.
Never made that connection either. Wow.
Do you think Violet's going to be upset that she's not another F like Fiona and Finn now?
No, because you just have to put a little accent on it with all of them. Finn and Violet and Fiona, they're basically the same.
Say it fast enough. It sounds so
Yeah.
weird. Yeah.
I like that you would transfer the V to them and not just the F to her.
No, that doesn't
Violet.
make any sense.
And shout out to Sammy for helping me create that intro joke. He told me that like 3 months ago, so I'm sure he's going to be really pumped to hear me use it.
It's amazing.
All right. Well, thanks for watching. Follow us on socials, and we'll see you next week.
See you, Sammy.